everyone, and welcome back to Carl's Conversations. This is the Black Excellence Showcase. And for those of you who don't know, maybe this is your first time with us on the Black Excellence Showcase, we take the time to take some examples of not only Black excellence, but excellence in general. But we're taking these examples from Black Americans, and we're showing the entire world about excellence, great examples of excellence in business, in industry, entertainment, arts, ministry, community advocacy, and all sorts of areas. And we have had several dozens of episodes now. It used to be years ago, I started doing this as the Black Business Showcase during Black History Month. But last year, with the political climate of our nation, it seems to me that I was being a bit limiting. Number one, limiting it to just Black History Month and limiting it just to business. And so now we have opened up this interview series, and we are showcasing portions of Black excellence everywhere. Now I'm going to say again tonight what I've been saying for the past few interviews. I don't want anybody outside of the Black diaspora to feel like we're stepping on your toes or being exclusionary. I'm just shining the spotlight on the community from which I come. Is that all right? That's all we're doing. And let me tell you something. These examples of excellence, they would be examples of excellence anywhere, anytime for anybody. They just happen to have a hue of skin that's similar to mine. But by the time we finish this interview tonight, you will understand why Mr. Timothy Armstrong has made the cut. And yes, he has the same last name as I do. Yes, he shares the same mother and father that I do, but he still had to make the cut. There's a whole bunch of folks who have the same last name as I do, but they may not be able to make the cut to make this particular series. Don't mean I don't love them, but it just is what it is. So we thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. I want to tell you this, and I had to tell him this in the lead up. When you are very familiar with the person, sometimes when you're doing business, when you're doing professional things, you have to put aside the personal familiar relationship, and you have to do business. And I found myself having to do that even in setting up the interview. And so I want to introduce him as a professional. This man is tremendously experienced, international recruiter. He has recruited for several international companies with extended travel and experience in the Middle East and the Far East, especially. These are not the only places he's been in the world, but with extensive travel experience in the Middle East and the Far East. He is now an entrepreneur, a chief executive officer, a managing director for his own company. He is doing mentoring in the local area, in the Tidewater, Hampton Roads area of Virginia. He is serving in the city of Portsmouth as a mayoral appointee, and I'm going to let him tell you all about it. He is a dad. He's an uncle. He's a minister of the gospel. He is a proud HBCU graduate. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to Mr. Timothy L. Armstrong. Congratulations, brother, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to find the guy that you just introduced.
Oh, it's you. Now, I could say all kind of flowery things, but if you do me a favor, I want you to take a moment and tell the folks a few things about yourself, because nobody can really tell your story like you can.
Yeah, sure. I'm just a native born Chesapeakean, if that's a word, born and raised in Chesapeake. But of course, we bounced around coming up in our formative years due to military connections. I pride myself in just being a globetrotter, so to speak. I went to a local high school in Chesapeake. Of course, I went to Norfolk State University and graduated in political science and economics. Thought I was going to go to law school, but marriage and children happened, and there's something called a job that was needed over law school, and so My first job out of college, my first real job out of college was with a retailer based in Matthews, North Carolina, and I was going through their management development class, and I got plucked out of that into the corporate environment as a recruiter, and it was just the grace of God that launched me there. And I was laughing because I think I've worked with some folks in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. And I looked at the person's age, and as a matter of fact, that person's another entrepreneur that I work with on some community work. And and I was thinking to myself, says, man, I was sitting at a boardroom table, you know, trying to explain what diversity was before you were born. It's so I was in charge of diversity in a North Carolina company back in the 90s, right? And this was before DEI was a thing, right?
Before it was a bad word.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was in that company. Yeah. So it took some time to convince those folks that it was a good thing. And so from there, I think I was just lucky and blessed because we come from such humble beginnings. Our parents grew up dirt poor. Our parents were teenage parents, and we had the odds stacked against us, and they through the grace of God, we're able to overcome some of the statistical averages that we were supposed to succumb to, that we didn't. And I had to get used to not only being the only Black person at the boardroom table, but then as I launched and started working overseas, I had to be comfortable with being the only person that spoke English as a native language, or the only person, the only American at the table. So being Black was nothing, was no big deal, because usually in that environment, everybody around you were people of color. So you had to be the only American or the only native English speaker. And now these days, I got to get used to being the oldest person at the table.
Oh, how the tables have turned.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. I'm the senior guy. So the Lord's been good to us and allowed us to live in 5 different countries and be a part of growing local companies and local talent. When I went to another country to work, I always looked at myself as a visitor, although I had residency, because my job was to train the local talent and then go home. And so I did plant myself there, and that's why I met my darling wife Jess. I met her while we were abroad. But so coming home, I just thought it was made sense, as we were looking after our elderly parents, to start my own business. Because what I mean, for 30 years in the corporate environment, people have paid me to do what I do. Why not get people to pay me directly to do what I do, and recruit and manage HR services throughout the community? So now we're based in Portsmouth. We're recruiting nurses from overseas to come to the U.S. That's one of our companies. Another company is our HR services company, Omnicruit HR. And so we are. It's a labor of love. It's hard out there in the streets. I'm here to tell you right now. Them
You
streets are
know,
cold.
you say the streets are cold.
Yes,
You know
sir,
what?
boy.
I understand better than most.
Yeah, yeah.
This is really interesting because I feel like I'm so behind the scenes on so much of what you're saying, so I want to bring it to
Hmm.
the forefront. We do come from very humble beginnings. Like you said,
Hmm.
we came from teenage parents who
Hmm.
were products of the civil rights era,
Hmm.
and extreme poverty, lack of exposure to many, many things, the hippie generation,
For
if you
sure.
would.
For
Uh,
sure.
and you and I grew up in abject poverty. And we have seen things and had experiences in our lives that we could not even dream of as children. And here
Hmm.
we are at this stage in our life, and you're talking about running an international business.
Hmm.
And so, for the sake of those who will see this interview, and they may be stuck, they have a dream, they have the burn in their belly, but they just don't have an example of how to do it. They don't have a Tim Armstrong to look up to. I'm going to try to pull some things from your story tonight that will help those persons. Maybe what you will say will push them over the edge. So I want to
Mhm.
take our time to go through the story.
Yeah,
We
sure.
come, we come from the hood,
Hmm.
right? And your career started out in the grocery business. A lot of people might not know that. I don't want you to talk about that. Working in the grocery store through high school, getting promoted to be a store manager at 19 years old, working your way through college. And I know you touched on it in your own introduction, but I want you to kind of walk through that a little bit so people can see the maturation of your career and how you hit your lick to get
Hmm.
into international business.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. I think you talked about how we grew up and how difficult it was. And we came from a working class blue collar family, right? And two income. We were latchkey kids, and bless the current generation, bless the heart, they don't know what the latchkey is. We were latchkey kids when you were in kindergarten and I was in third grade, right?
Hmm.
And those were very difficult times, but there were lonely times. But it was very, very teaching. It was a teaching moment for us that allowed us to really grow and mature, and we didn't even know it. We didn't even know what we were going through. Um, but thank God he protected us while we were coming up. So I said all that to say this, that we had to work, right? And so if you I remember mom telling me, if you want school clothes, you got to go get a job, right? And so I wanted school clothes, so I got a job. And I knew my first job was working as a dishwasher in a steakhouse, and that job lasted for 3 days. Let me tell you something, son. I said I won't never gonna work that hard in my life again.
I
Not that I'm
remember that.
afraid. No, sir. And so that's how I got started in the grocery business. And it just looked like it was very easy for me. Of course, you're in front of people and working with your hands and thinking, and so it's very easy for me. And so I didn't have a plan out after high school. Of course, I thought I was going to go into the Air Force, but that was interrupted by our father, who thought that it would be better that I go to college. And that you could either praise or cry over that, but that is what it is, and that has a place in history and charted me on my course. And you know, I I I, I believe that if you have not, you ask not. I mean, if you ask not, you have not, right? If you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. And so I was 18, just out of high school, just graduated, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I wrote a letter to the president of the company. Say, hey, I want to be in the management training program. I didn't know there's a formal application or anything. I wrote a personal letter to the president of the company. He called my boss, said, who is this guy? Promote him. And so I got trained as in my first supervisory position there in the store, not the formal management training program that they had, but that just launched me into the ability to see my way through college and understand what it was to be in a managerial position. And at 18 years old, I was supervising people 3 4 times my age. And I think it just came natural through the grace of God, through what He has given us as talent, to be able to handle that role and handle several hundred thousands of dollars in cash and receipts and things like that, and just go about doing your job. And that's how I bumped my way through college. You're just trying to hustle here and there. It's always been a hustle, but the cure to a lot of ailments in life, a cure to a lot of problems in life, is hard work.
Hmm.
A single man in his 20s, so you need to have 2 or 3 jobs. I'm sorry. And as a recruiter, when I started recruiting the generation behind me, when I was recruiting that generation, you had kids coming out of college wanting $100,000 a year, and that was in the 90s. And that wasn't the reality. I think I'm finding with most entrepreneurs and most folks coming out of college, no one wants to put in the work.
Mm.
It's just hard work. I mean, it everything's a hustle, everything's a grind, and don't be too proud. When I went through graduate school, I went through Southeastern Seminary down in Wake Forest, North Carolina. You know, I had a crazy work schedule. I had to pick up an extra job because tuition and rent never stopped. The light bills never stopped. So I had to pick up an extra job and clean bathrooms and clean offices at the over at the Church Initiative. Thanks, Sam. Over at Church Initiative in Wake Forest, I cleaned their office at night. You know, I think 3 or 4 nights a week just to make ends meet. And so I was a full-time graduate student, had a full-time job, and working nights, and it's just hard work. I mean, there was no we didn't have rich parents, so there was no trust fund, there was no savings that our parents can dig in and give us $10,000, $20,000 a time. You just had to work hard.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, I like that part of the story. Now, you started in the grocery business, you got into management. Now, how did you get into international recruiting? Because that's a big jump.
Right. So I don't suffer fools very well. I have a low tolerance for silliness. I have a low tolerance for intellectual laziness.
Hmm.
Okay. I don't talk. I just can't deal with people who just use your brain. God gave us the ability to think and to reason. He gave it to all of us. Um, Even to the least of them, he gave it to us. So um, I was working in. I was again a field recruiter in the South in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, and I mean, I was at the top of my game. I was training my peers. I was seen as a mentor to my peers. They would always send me out to either train a new person or to help get someone out of trouble because they were falling short in their job. So I got sent all over the country. A brand new division opened up. They said, Tim, we got a brand new division, and you're our guy to run it. As far as staffing it and running it, I said, okay, sure. I'll move out of Chesapeake and move over to Tennessee. But after doing that for a while, my boss left, and so the job opened up, and I applied for the job, and they pulled some guy, some lawyer, out of legal to HR who knew nothing about HR, who's my boss. I'm thinking, who is this guy, right? And so I had a problem with that. I had a real problem with that because I had demonstrated my ability to work. Not that I've been there a long time. I did the work of a manager, right? Plain and simple, I did the work. That's why I was brought over to the new division. And so I said, okay, I'm tired of working for stupid people. And so I answered um, um, I answered an ad to work overseas. I says, you know what? I always want to to go overseas and having it an experience. So I answered a monster.com ad. I don't know if that's still around these days, but I got a call. This lady called me while I was in church on a Sunday morning, like, don't you know it's a church hour? You don't call us while we're in church. And so and so I answered the call, and of course I took a 1 year contract. And I remember, oh my God, I'm leaving my family for a year, and it was the most difficult thing I've ever done because I've never been separated from my children, and I'm a dad. If anything, I'm a dad.
Hmm.
Um, and so I remember, I flew from Nashville to Minneapolis, and then I remember that Minneapolis flight taking off, and I remember going over Canada, and I said, oh my God, what have I gotten myself got to Kuwait on March 31st, 2006, and it was 80 degrees at night at 11 o'clock at night. Again, it's like, what did I get myself into? And so, I mean, it took 30 days, maybe 6 weeks. It wasn't long that my boss there had left, and I was charged with finding my new boss. And we were hitting strikes, and we weren't getting any balls thrown at us. And so the president of the company came to me and said, will you take the job? And I said, yeah, these are my conditions. I'll take it. I get to pick my own team. I get to set my own rules. I get to do this because I saw problems in the team.
Hmm.
And, and from there, this is how good God is. And this is what your faithfulness and hard work and your faithfulness, this is what pays off. First of all, work hard. Come in early. You're not going to get credit. No one's going to pat you on the back for coming in early. No one's going to pat you on the back for staying late, but you do it to get the job done no matter what it takes. Work hard. And so that boss left one contract into another contract in Kuwait. And she picked up the phone one day and said, "Hey Tim, I heard they phased out your job," because I stayed in that job about 18 months. They say they phased out your job. I got a job for you. Come on over. And one thing happened. I went to that contract, and then the friend of mine on the first contract in Iraq was he turned out a job in Saudi Arabia. Say I knew a guy that might take it, so he called me and said, "Hey, I just turned out a job in Saudi Arabia. Are you willing to go to Saudi?" "Yeah, I'll go." And and that's just how it happened. God will ring your phone. He has your phone number. I promise you. Let's do that. God has your phone number, and He will call you. Sometimes you ain't got to call Him. He'll call you. And so again, as my contract wound down after 3 years, it wound down in Saudi Arabia. I mean, and I was driving across to Bahrain one day, and my supervisor in Abu Dhabi called me. She said, "Hey, we got a joint venture project in Bahrain. Would you be willing to take the job? You're a man." I said, "Yeah, I'll take it." So when my contract wound down, I picked up a job in Abu Dhabi. That same boss, she retired. I think 2 years later, two years later, and she gave me a call and said, "Hey, I'm retiring. You want my job?" "Yeah, I'll take your job." So I went from Bahrain to Abu Dhabi, and that was probably the largest position that I've had, because while I was in Abu Dhabi, I was a global recruiter. Although I was a global recruiter for the other companies, because we're recruiting out of Southeast Asia and South Asia a lot, but I had direct supervisor responsibility for the Vietnam team, the Singapore team, the Malaysia team, and so there's another country in there somewhere.
The Philippines.
No, it wasn't Philippines. Thailand, the Thailand team. And so part of my job was, and this is just a poor black boy from Virginia. Part of my job is to bounce around from place to place. And bosses say, "I need you to go to Malaysia for a month." "Where you go?" "Yeah." "We got a big project here." "Where you go?" "Yeah." I would go anywhere. I was set to go to Kazakhstan, but it didn't go. But wherever we had a project, I was in charge of the team that was recruiting and hiring for those different countries. And so, I had to get real smart on labor law in every country that I lived in. I had to get real smart on labor law in the countries that I had direct supervisory responsibility for. And so, God knows your number.
So let me ask you, all of that corporate exposure, all of that international travel, doing international business, like you said, learning labor law in all of these different regions, all of these different countries, how did that help you to run Omnicruit and all the other things that you're doing? Because not only are you running Omnicruit, but you're also teaching some small business owners. You're doing some mentoring also. You're also a commissioner sitting on one of the boards in the city of Portsmouth. How did all that business experience locally and internationally, how did it prepare you for what you're doing now?
It gave me perspective. I want to go back before I go forward. You mentioned I sit on the commission with Portsmouth. I'm so excited about the city of Portsmouth, who has had a bad history of violence and neglect and poverty. But it's so exciting. And I tell people that I've lived all over the world, including Dubai. If you say Abu Dhabi, no one knows what you're talking about, but it's 70 kilometers away from Dubai. I spend enough time there to say I live there. But even places like Dubai, I've lived, and nothing excites me like the city of Portsmouth. But it's having to go over there and understand what you have at home is what's very exciting. And so my preparation was just perspective. I think I have, first of all, I got free training, right? So out of all these years while I was overseas, I was always constantly learning, training, because there was always a new project being thrown in your lap. And the last company I worked in Kuwait was just chaos. And I loved the chaos because I had to be creative, think on my feet, solve a problem within the cultural context and the legal context of that country and that company. And so it teaches you to be very sensitive. It teaches you to be very understanding. And I'm going to have a lot of opinions about immigration that most people I talk to don't have. And that's simply because I've experienced it. My wife is an immigrant. here in the US, and I'm an immigrant in her country, right? And so we understand, and as well as you do, you understand what it's like to go and to have to get a residency visa and have to, work within that framework. And so that gave me a lot of sensitivities, and my job as a recruiter recruiting nurses to the US, I can just rattle off, not, and I'm not bragging or anything, but I understand immigration law. I understand what it takes. I understand what it takes to get here, be here, stay here, and do the work, as well as other places. And so as I run Omnicruit with a global team. We just hired our second person from Kenya, and we have an entire team that is from the Philippines. And so having those folks on the team is quite natural for me because I understand. We had a young lady that was in Egypt. We hired her right at the beginning of Ramadan, and so she had a performance issue, and it was my understanding of what Ramadan is like to understand that this is Ramadan. This is not her failing to perform. This is her going through Ramadan, right? And it was only I think I had about 15 years, 15 Ramadans experience on my plate, where I've actually been in country during Ramadan. And so it gave me some perspective and understanding people, and also understanding what great country that we live in, and B, the opportunity that we have, because the United States gives us this opportunity. See, no matter what your last name is, you can get a job and do anything and work anywhere. No matter what your educational background is, you can get a job and do anything anywhere. No matter what type of circumstances you have, well, no matter what kind of tribe, neighborhood, or zip code that you were raised in, you have the opportunity, but it's up to you to go out and get it. And sometimes we don't have all the answers and we can't figure it out. But we got something called the telephone. Most Americans have telephones. Unfortunately, I'm going to say this, we spend too much time looking at stuff that rots our brain and I challenge my own children, my own daughter who's 16. If you don't know XYZ, that's your fault, because you can pick up this phone and you can look up anything you want on this. And it's because you fail to go out and be curious and understand the world around you. And I think that's the best way to learn. The best teacher for the entrepreneur, for the young person, for the fresh graduate, is be obsessively curious. Always ask why. Always ask how. How did they do that? Why did they do that? What is the reasoning? And you may not necessarily agree with anyone or something, but if you get an understanding, you can have an articulate conversation about it. I
Hmm.
I have conversations with a lot of people about a lot of things we disagree with, but unfortunately, some folk just don't know facts, and so they argue from emotion versus facts. And so if we're going to go out and get a business loan, understand that your city may have grants. City of Portsmouth in 2023, I think, or 2024, had to give back money to the city because they could not find enough small businesses to give the money to. Now, that's not because there wasn't enough businesses to give the money to. The people didn't have a knowledge and an understanding that the city gives you money to start your business. Think
Wow.
about that. They give you enough money to pay for your website, to get to pay rent for a month or two, to get all your registrations with the state and everything else. And then after 3 years, you get another grant.
Wow. But people don't know.
We have to ask questions.
Right. Right. So it's amazing that you're talking about really a natural, may not be natural for some people is natural, other people is learned, an intellectual curiosity.
Hmm.
I share your frustration with the intellectual lazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
I
share that.
I spend most of my day watching global news.
Hmm.
I watch Al Jazeera. I watch news from South Korea. I watch news from the Philippines. I watch news from Great Britain. I watch news from India, because there's a lot of activity in this world that that is going on that we don't know about.
Hmm.
Because when you think about our, even though we're in a 24 news cycle, our evening news is just 30 minutes,
That's right.
right? ABC, CBS, just 30 minutes. And some of the other stuff that are on the 24-hour news channels, a lot of that is commentary,
Hmm.
opinion, right? And so we're
Hmm.
not getting some facts. And also, I like to see what is everybody else saying about us.
And you know what? Living internationally makes you keenly aware of other news. Uh, During my very early military career, in 1991, I was stationed in Europe, in Germany, and that was my first taste of international news. I was shocked at how our country was viewed by others because I had never seen it from that perspective. And it began to shape my perspective on a lot of things. And
Mhm.
so, traveling like that does open you up because you have exposure. And that's
Mhm.
why I wanted to know how that, extensive exposure that you've had
Mhm.
internationally, how it affects how you do business now, because you probably have a leg up on a lot of your contemporaries who may have not traveled the way you have.
Mhm. DW. That's German news channel. That's what I watch. And I watch everything from this, right?
Wow.
Go to YouTube and just favorite a lot of those channels, and you'd be surprised what pops up. And with the ongoings in Nigeria and the persecution of Christians, that is not headlined on our news, right?
Mhm.
There are Christians being persecuted. We should be paying attention to that. um, we're watching this craziness in the Middle East right now, and both you and I are seeing places that we used to visit being bombed. Right,
Yes.
the first bomb that hit Bahrain was a mile away from my house that I could see out of my from my rooftop. And the embassy hit in the bomb that hit in Kuwait by the U.S. embassy was 3 miles down the street, directly down the street
Yeah.
from me and Rumathea in Kuwait. And
The,
so
the one that landed on Air John, not far from where we worked.
Camp Buring. And so
Yeah.
these are places you see in the news like, oh my God, I know exactly where that is, right? And these are places where you used to work and live and understand. And again, there's that experience that give you perspective, and understanding that we have men and women in uniform there looking out for us. Thank God. And Camp Ali Salim has been hit as well, and these are places that are very familiar with us.
Wow. I want to talk about, if you don't mind, the mentoring that you're doing there in Portsmouth with Surge, the teaching that you're doing with small businesses. I want you to talk about that. Number one, what you're doing and exactly how you're doing it, and how does it feel to pour out, to be able to pour out in that way in the environment of the teaching environment, and then being a mentor also. How is it working out for you?
Yeah, okay. So this is I've taken this cohort off. I think I've done 6 or 7 cohorts of small businesses with Surge, and that's through Black Brand and Norfolk, Virginia, and is led by Blair Durham. Um, so I find that we're given this small business academy to teach small businesses how to get started. We're talking about one of the deliverables for Surge is having an executive summary. Well, I don't like that. I try to encourage them to have a business plan by the time they get out of class. But we're leading up to the business plan. What's your marketing strategy? What's your budget? What's your cost of goods sold? And we gamify it. And we have homework and lessons that we go through for 12 weeks, where we're constantly working with them on copyright law. We're constantly working with them with advertising and just writing a solid business idea and game playing that out. Because some of these businesses are in the ideation stage and they're not ready to start yet, and some businesses are actually up and running. And so I book time with all of these students. They have time with me, and I tell them as long as I'm instructing their class, they get free sessions with me. So I can not only can I mentor them, but I can give them free advice and free counseling sessions, and they get 30-minute blocks to block out on my calendar. And so what I do with them is I sit down with them and I go through. First of all, what the first question I ask when we get on the call, when I'm starting to mentor the small business owners, what is the outcome that you want from this one call? Because all of my questions are going to be targeted towards getting them to the outcome that they want. And it could be, Tim, I just want you to read my executive summary. I just want you to read my business plan. I just want you to look at my my website. Or, I have no idea what my financials should look like. What's a 5-year performer? I have no idea what that looks like. Or, I do everything in my personal bank account. So let's pull that apart. And so I spend that class time, and this is not obligated. I'm not obligated to do this through Surge. Surge does not require me to have one-on-one sessions with them. And so all of these are volunteer hours. I think last year, I think I gave a total of maybe 68 volunteer hours, and that's 120 some odd sessions. I think it's over the last few cohorts. So, but the idea is to give them a perspective from a fellow entrepreneur so that you don't make the same dumb mistakes that I made, right?
Hmm.
I probably spent too much money at first. I did not understand what funding was out there and available for me. And let me pause for station identification. Every organization out there that says they're out there to help small businesses, women, and minorities, it's a lie, and that's the truth. That is probably the most difficult lesson that I had to learn, right? Because there's a lot of organizations out there talk a good game, and you know who you are, and don't help nobody. And the second, and one of the things I tell the students on the first day of class, I says, your business is a great idea to you, and don't nobody give a good god darn about your business. The minute you understand that, you're ready to get started and have a conversation. Because a lot of our small businesses, especially in our community, they have a great idea, but they haven't means tested it. They haven't done any market research, any market analysis, any customer research. Who's your customer? What do they want to buy? Are they willing to buy it from you? Are they willing to pay your price? That's the question, right? And until you can answer that question, you're probably not ready to start to go into business. And far too often, we have a lot of entrepreneurs go into business who haven't tested the market. Every cohort, I got someone who wants to braid hair. Okay, that's great. We all need hair braided, but who's your customer, right? And what makes you different from the other 10 hair braiders that's in your community? What makes you better than them? What makes your customer who if your customer's getting their hair braided, they already have someone doing it. What makes your customer leave that provider and come to you? And so what are you doing? Right?
This is good stuff
Yeah.
because there may not be someone in their circle who's asking these very, very difficult questions.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, you get a Tim Armstrong or someone of your equivalency in that program who can pose the tough questions, which makes you develop, or just pack your stuff up and go home.
Mm-hmm. And I've had students come to me and said, you know what? I think two says, I'm not doing this. This is not for me. Great. That's a great idea because I'm glad you didn't waste your money. Or I've had 3 or 4 students come to me and say, Tim, after talking to you, I made a pivot. I've changed. I'm doing this and this. I said, great. I'm glad you didn't waste your money. And so the surge program is a means tester for the small businesses. And I tell them, if you decide not to go into business after going through a few sessions of this class, that's perfect. That's what the class is for. The class will help you determine whether your business is viable and to help you grow. And if not, we can start over. We can push your reset button, and I'm here to help you. I help you write your business plan. I help you do your financials. I help you do your customer, your marketing research and understand the market, right? And now that we have AI, and this is a word of warning to college students: don't let AI write your papers because they all write the same. Your professor will know it, and don't write your business plan with AI. Um, you can use AI to help enhance it, to rewrite and to edit, but your business plan has to be your idea because you have to internalize your business plan. If you don't, I've had my board come to me and say, Tim, you're getting over your skis. We shouldn't be doing this. Yes, it should. It's in the business plan. Have you read it? Right. This is in this section on that page in the business plan. Right. Or they come up with an idea. I says, yeah, I think that's a good idea, but that's in the business plan, but that's not until year 5. Right. Or yeah, that is in the business plan. We've done it. It didn't work. And so we pivoted from that in the business plan. And so your business plan is your holy text, your scripture, right,
Hmm.
for your business, so that you have direction and understand of where you're going in your business.
So, how has it affected you to be able to pour into these people?
It's humbling. It really teaches me to keep a perspective of who I am, whose I am, and that I'm in the same boat as everybody else. I tell all my students, I'm no different from you. I'm in the hustle and I'm in the grind just like you are.
Wow. Wow. I want to talk about Lead 757. Uh, I'm proud of your attendance and accomplishments in Lead 757. Can you take a moment to tell the audience about Lead 757, your participation in it, and how it has affected you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lead 757 is a Hampton Roads leadership cohort for a lot of people, not necessarily, not even for entrepreneurs, because in my cohort we had folks from Truist Bank, we had folks from um, um, uh, uh, I think we had police department, fire department, we had one CFO from the airport. We had folks from different walks of life in different industries serving in different roles, and I was one of the few entrepreneurs in the group. And so it Lead 757 is just like Lefco. Lefco is another executive leadership cohort in Portsmouth focused on growing leaders in Portsmouth. And so Lead 757 is designed to grow leaders in our community. And I tell you what, we met once a month, and we went on field trips, so to speak. And so where you get the understanding of what transportation is like in Hampton Road, and you talk to all the folks that are a part of the transportation solution. You take a tour of we couldn't go on the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, so we went on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. Get to understand how the construction is going to affect traffic in the area. We were on Dam Neck base and got the tour and get up close and personal to the F-18 Hornets, but did spend time with the military liaisons on the base and understand what role the base plays in the area with security, with community, et cetera. Of course, we did a healthcare day where we were at one of the Centera facilities. We're at one of the biogenic facilities where they did the freezing of body parts, and so that they could have it for research and helping other people with various diseases. And so it's 10 months of this very good stuff of building us leaders so that we're bigger advocates and leaders in the community. And it's run by the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce. And so we had a lot of folks just talking about the chamber at every single meeting we went to. And of course, we had a day with city leaders, and you have a day up in Richmond as well with our state leaders. So it's a great program that really humbled me, right? Helped me get reacquainted with Hampton Roads because I'd been away for 18 years. When I left Southeast Virginia and went to Nashville, I went overseas for 15 years, and then I went to Washington D.C. for 3 years. And so it kept me away for 18. My role kept me away for 18 years, and so I had to come back and get reacquainted with the area. So Lead 757, Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce, do that, and LEFCO for the city of Portsmouth, do that. And I'm quite sure the city of Richmond in Northern Virginia has those types of cohorts as well.
Wow. Now, how has your appointment to this zoning commission worked out for you in the city of Portsmouth?
Makes me Portsmouth proud, that's for sure. And uh, we we're the zoning appeals commission, right? And so if someone needs to come in and get zoning for a building in the city, if it needs to be approved or denied or something like that, they'll bring it to us. And if it's outside of code or outside of what the city ordinances are, and so the the homeowners and a lot of the businesses, it's really refreshing because I would say 95% of the builders that come to us are Black business owners. And so
Mhm.
we see these guys in their overalls with these rough hands, and you can tell they're working men. And it makes me so proud to understand that our city is being built by the common man, the common blue collar worker. This is not a major corporate push. We're building Portsmouth one house at a time. And it's amazing what they're doing. And so we have a lot of antiquated ordinances. Sorry, City Council. Sorry, Mayor Glover. But we do because at like the third or fourth session, I says we have these same variances that come up, where we want to cut the setback of a yard from X amount of feet to X amount of feet. Well, why are we doing this? We don't rubber stamp it, but we look at it and say it's more practical to do this because the current standards of building right now and how the city have grown and how building is done in this modern time. And so we probably need to adjust some of the city ordinances to accommodate these buildings, which put me out of a job. But nonetheless, we have to. So we had a very difficult case last week. We had a man who came to the zoning commission who wanted to get a approval for his height, right? The house has to be a certain height to qualify for flood zone passing. So he built the house to a certain height. Well, he didn't. The house did not meet the code, and he built the house without getting the final approval, the final certificate before he finished the house. He finished the house. Now he needs a certificate of occupancy. Now he doesn't have that final approval for the height. Come to find out, he's, I think, 9 inches too low. Well, his argument was all the houses around this house that I just built are close to the ground and lower than my house. Those houses were built in the 50s, 40s, and 30s, right? Different zoning. So, can we give this guy a variance? Can we approve it? Black business owner, Black builder, right? Bringing taxpayers into the city. That's what we want. However, the city came back and said, hey, if we give this guy this variance, it may mess up our audit that's coming up in August by FEMA. Now, FEMA gives the entire city, I think it's a 15% discount on flood insurance. If they audit us and find that we have too many people that are outside of the code for passage, they can either reduce or wipe away the discount that FEMA gives on flood insurance. And so, do we give this one builder this permit to this waiver of the certificate of his height? I can't remember the technical term. I'm not a technical guy. So he can get a certificate of occupancy so we can bring more taxpayers into the city, or do we just tell him no because it's going to affect everyone in the city? And so I said, we can't do this to every other person in the city who built their house properly. Sir, I'm sorry. You should have got the permission before you finish your house. And so I got some stares and some jeers because I voted no, asked the tough questions. We did not pass it. I think it was almost unanimous. If it wasn't unanimous, it was almost unanimous. Telling him no. Did we want to do that? Heck no. We spent more time with this guy trying to find a solution. Well, what if we waited to after the audit? What how much does FEMA look at, and if we let this one guy through, how will that affect the audit? So everyone on the commission was trying to find a solution for this guy, and it comes down like, no, this is going to work. And unfortunately, we got an empty house in Portsmouth that he can't occupy. He's going to have to tear it down and start all over again. It's going to cost him $30,000 to jack it up. And so that's who wanted to do it, but we had to. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Thank you. Rules are rules.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. That's tough.
yeah. I'm sorry that was a long story, but sometimes government is ugly.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we see the decisions that the government makes, but we don't understand the process that people had to go through.
Well, this is why I like to do these interviews, because when we talk to people who are doing the things that you're doing, we get insight and understanding.
Hmm.
I've been saying this for the past several years. I tell my wife all the time, we talk too much.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is we do a lot of talking about things that we really don't have expertise in.
Hmm.
And especially when people look up to you, it seems to them like you are one speaking with authority, but many times we're not. We're just talking. And so now I don't know what story he's going to go and tell. It's probably not going to be a good one because it's going to cost him a lot of money. But will he tell the whole story? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, he made a mistake, and I'm not saying that he did it out of malice. It could have been a very honest mistake. He
It
he could
was
have
an honest mistake. It really
went
was.
he went into that mail thinking that he knew exactly what was going on. But you guys are appointed by the city, and you have a job to do to look out for the city. You try to do the best you can, but sometimes this is the way things work. But you telling that story may help several other builders who may look at this interview
Hmm.
or who may talk to him and say, hey, before I swing this hammer, let me go
Yeah.
and make sure I know exactly what I'm doing, because I don't want to have to work twice and spend money that I don't need to spend.
Yeah, he just there was another builder there that spoke in his behalf, and this guy he was an experienced builder. He had built in Portsmouth before, but never in a flood zone, and we understood that. I mean, again, everybody's trying to work with him, but as I was walking out the building, the other builder that was there to speak on his behalf just looked at me and said, "You cold blooded. That was cold blooded, man. Like, why would you call me cold blooded when you saw the hard work that we were doing to try to help him?" And you saw that beyond our help, we could not find a solution. And so, unfortunately, that builder goes out and says these scallywags are cold-blooded, and look what they did to this man. When he won't tell the whole story, they spent a lot of time with him trying to work through a solution, but couldn't find one and had to vote the way they did. And so,
Perspective,
yes,
you know.
this is not the first time I've been the bad guy. It's just life.
It is what it is. Listen, this has been a tremendous time with you. But before we end the interview, I always like to do this with the people that I have here. There may be something that I did not ask, that I didn't cover, that maybe you want to tell the audience, maybe something you want to tell them about your business, maybe something you want to tell them about something else that you're doing. And I want to give you an opportunity to address the audience with anything that's on your heart, on your mind. Maybe I didn't pull it out.
Yeah, sure. I love to plug the business. Omnicruit.us, OMNICRUIT.us is our nurse recruiting company. OmnicruitInternational.com is our parent company, and OmniGroupHR.com is our staffing and HR services company. I just wanted to say that, God has been so good to me to give me some experiences and perspective, the ability to speak other languages, understand, and to get outside of what statistics said we should have been. We should have been statistics, but we had our mother was very deliberate. Our fathers were very stern and had high expectations, and it is the hard work that we were taught by our elders to get up and go to work every day. If you're a young person looking at this video, there is no reason why you cannot be an entrepreneur. And there is no reason why you cannot excel in business. A lot of us want to keep it 100. A lot of us want to keep it real. Well, in some of our cultures, keeping it 100 and keeping it real is counterculture, and that will be the detriment to your success. And so it's not code switching, and it's not selling out. It is just, when you go to Major League Baseball, you play Major League Baseball rules. You don't play farm league rules. You don't play pony league high school baseball rules. You play Major League rules. And that's just it. You're not going to the NFL and play by a different set of rules. That is just it. And you can get a nice, healthy paycheck because you played by the rules of that particular game. And that's what the corporate environment is like. And it is speaking up, but being polite. It is speaking out, but being considerate. It is working hard. It is towing the line. It is doing what you're asked not to do and doing that which you are asked to do. And it is being a friend to the friendless. Find it, what's going to humble you in life? Find the most unlikely friend to be a friend with and be a friend to them. If you're a college student, find the biggest nerd in your class and go be a friend, do your homework with them. Right? Guys, find the ugliest girl on campus. No ugly girls anyway, but the least is right. Walk across the street. Offer to buy somebody some coffee. Do good to somebody in your work environment on your college campus, and you'll be amazed how good God will treat you and how good he will reward you. You will be absolutely amazed. Hard work is the cure for poverty. Hard work is the cure for lack of education. Hard work is the cure for getting businesses up and running in America.
Oh man, I appreciate that. It has been a joy and an honor to talk to you. Of course, this was interview number one, but I'm gonna have to bring you back. There's so many things that you're doing, and you mentioned three different divisions of Omnicruit. That's a whole interview right there. We'll talk about that on the next one.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Timothy L. Armstrong. He is the founder, managing director / CEO of Omnicruit and all of its divisions. He is a participant in the Surge program where he operates as an instructor / mentor. He is a graduate of Lead 757. He is a commissioner on the what is it? The
Zoning Appeals Commission.
Zoning Appeals Commission. I almost messed it up for the city of Portsmouth. All right. He's also a minister of the gospel. We didn't even get into that part. Time didn't permit. We'll catch up on that part on the next interview. Listen, it has been absolute pleasure and honor to feature this portion of excellence, not just Black excellence, but excellence. And it is my prayer that all of you who were in the live audience and those of you who will catch the playback, even the clips that we'll put out, I pray that you will pick up something very, very positive from what we exposed today. All right. Until next time, on the 27th of April, we're going to have nurse practitioner Dominique Hawkins coming to us. Let me tell you, she's a powerhouse, and I'm going to enjoy that interview. Mark your calendars. April 27th, Monday, April 27th at 7:30 p.m. Nurse practitioner Dominique Hawkins. She's going to be featured here on the Black Excellence Showcase, Carl's Conversations. You don't want to miss it. She's a
That
very
is going to be a
interesting
treat.
person. Yes,
Be a treat. Yes.
very interesting person. You don't want to miss it. All right. Until then, you all be well. And remember, if you have an interesting story, you may find yourself right here on Carl's Conversations, a safe place to have difficult conversations. Bye bye for now.